The slave auction on Kepler Station buzzed with the usual crowd of wealthy aliens looking for cheap labor. Captain Vextar adjusted his purple tentacles and examined the merchandise with cold, calculating eyes. Most of the humans looked strong enough for mining work or construction, but one caught his attention for all the wrong reasons. She sat in the corner cage, barely skin and bones, with matted brown hair and clothes that had seen better decades. Her eyes were dull and she moved like every bone in her body ached. The auctioneer had already marked her cage with a red X, meaning she was destined for the disposal units if no one bought her. What about that one? Vextar pointed a tentacle toward the woman. The Thraxian auctioneer, a lizard-like creature with golden scales, hissed in amusement. That worthless thing? She's been here for 6 months. No one wants her. She's too weak for manual labor, too stupid for technical work, and too ugly for entertainment. We're putting her down tomorrow to save on feeding costs. Vextar studied the woman more carefully. Something about her posture suggested she was listening, even though she appeared unconscious. What's her background? Found her drifting in a damaged escape pod near the rim. No identification, no memory of where she came from. Probably some failed colonist or refugee. The medical scans showed severe malnutrition and some kind of neural damage. Complete waste of space. The captain species, the Zephyrians, were known throughout the galaxy for their ability to read potential in others. It was what made them such successful traders and negotiators. As he looked at the human woman, something deep in his alien consciousness whispered that there was more here than met the eye. "I'll take her," Vextar announced. The auctioneer's jaw dropped. "Sir, I must advise against this purchase. She'll probably die within a week. You'd be throwing away perfectly good credits." "How much?" "Well, since she's scheduled for disposal anyway, 50 credits. Vextar transferred the credits without hesitation. It was barely enough to buy a decent meal on most stations, but for a human life, it seemed both too little and too much at the same time. As the cage door opened, the woman's eyes fluttered open. They were green, Vextar noticed, and despite everything she'd been through, there was still a spark of intelligence there. She looked up at him with confusion and fear. "Can you walk?" he asked in broken standard human. She nodded weakly and struggled to her feet. Her legs shook, but she managed to stand without falling. Vextar felt that strange sensation again, like he was looking at a puzzle with most of the pieces missing. "Come," he said simply, and she followed him out of the auction house. His ship, the Meridian, was docked at Port 17. It wasn't the biggest vessel in the galaxy, but it was fast and reliable. As they walked through the station's corridors, other aliens stared at the odd pair. A successful Zephyrian captain and what appeared to be a dying human slave. Once aboard the ship, Vextar led her to the small medical bay. "Sit," he commanded, gesturing to the examination table. She obeyed without question, but her eyes never left his face. Those green eyes held secrets, he was certain of it. The medical scanner hummed as it analyzed her condition. Severe malnutrition, dehydration, muscle atrophy, and signs of long-term stress. But there was something else the scanner picked up. Something the crude equipment at the slave market had missed. Neural implant scarring. Vextar's tentacles twitched in excitement. Someone had surgically removed advanced neural implants from this woman's brain. The kind of implants that were only used by high-level technicians, scientists, or military personnel. The scars were old but well hidden, suggesting professional work. "What is your name?" he asked. She opened her mouth, then closed it. She tried again and only a whisper came out. I don't remember." But Vextar was beginning to suspect that her lost memories might be worth far more than the 50 credits he'd paid for her life. 3 days into their journey to the outer rim, Vextar watched the human woman slowly come back to life. Proper food, clean water, and medical treatment worked wonders. Her skin regained some color, and her eyes grew brighter each day. She still didn't remember her name or her past, but she was clearly intelligent. She learned the ship's routines quickly, helping with simple maintenance tasks without being asked. Her hands moved with surprising skill when working with technical equipment, even though she claimed no memory of ever doing such work before. "You have good instincts with machines," Vextar observed as she expertly rewired a damaged conduit that had been giving him trouble for weeks. She paused, looking down at her hands in surprise. "I don't know why I knew how to do that. It just felt natural." That evening, while reviewing star charts in his quarters, Vextar heard a commotion from the engineering section. He rushed down to find the woman standing before the ship's main computer terminal, her hands flying over the controls with practiced ease. "What are you doing?" he demanded. She spun around, eyes wide with panic. "I'm sorry. I couldn't sleep and I heard this beeping sound. The navigation computer was showing error codes and I knew how to fix it." Vextar checked the display. She had not only fixed the navigation errors, but had optimized the entire system's efficiency by 12%. This was work that would have taken his best technician hours to complete, and she had done it in minutes. "Where did you learn to do this?" "I don't know," she whispered, backing away from the console as if it had burned her. "I looked at the screen and suddenly I understood what all the numbers meant. I could see the problems and how to fix them." That night, Vextar couldn't sleep. He ran deep background checks on every human colony that had been destroyed or abandoned in the past few years. There had been many. The galaxy was not kind to human settlements, especially those on the frontier. But one name kept appearing in the reports: Dr. Elena Vasquez, lead engineer for the Prometheus Research Station. The station had been developing advanced AI systems for human colonial defense when it went dark 18 months ago. All personnel were presumed dead. The next morning, Vextar showed the woman a hologram of Dr. Vasquez. "Do you recognize this person?" She studied the image carefully. The woman in the hologram was healthy and confident, wearing a crisp uniform with technical insignia. Her dark hair was neatly styled, and her green eyes sparkled with intelligence and determination. "She looks familiar," the woman said slowly, "like someone I might have known once, but I can't place her." Vextar didn't tell her that she was looking at herself from before whatever had happened to strip away her memories and identity. Instead, he began planning their next destination. "We're changing course," he announced. "There's someone I think you should meet." The woman nodded trustingly. She had grown to depend on the alien captain who had saved her from certain death. She didn't question his decisions, even when they took them deeper into dangerous space. But as they traveled toward the coordinates of the destroyed Prometheus station, strange things began happening aboard the ship. Systems that had worked perfectly for years suddenly began operating at peak efficiency. The ship's AI started responding faster and with more accurate information. Even the food processors seemed to make better meals. It was as if the woman's mere presence was upgrading everything she came into contact with. Vextar began to suspect that whoever had tried to erase her memories had failed to destroy everything. Her knowledge was still there, buried deep, waiting for the right triggers to bring it back to the surface. The question was, what had she known that someone had considered worth killing her for? The debris field that had once been Prometheus Research Station stretched across several thousand kilometers of space. Twisted metal and frozen atmosphere created a ghostly monument to human ambition. Vextar guided his ship carefully through the wreckage, watching the woman's face for any sign of recognition. She pressed her face against the viewport, her breath fogging the glass. "This place feels important," she whispered. "Like I've been here before." "You have," Vexatar said gently. "This was your home." Her hands began to shake. "I worked here?" "You were the lead engineer. This station was your life's work." As they docked with what remained of the central hub, the woman's headaches began. They started as a dull throb behind her eyes, but quickly escalated into something that made her cry out in pain. Vextar wanted to turn back, but she insisted they continue. "I need to see," she gasped between waves of agony. "I need to remember." The station's corridors were dark and filled with floating debris. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows on the walls. Vextar's suit sensors detected traces of weapon fire and explosive damage. This hadn't been an accident or system failure. Someone had deliberately destroyed this place. They made their way to what the station schematics labeled as the main laboratory. The massive chamber had once housed dozens of computer systems and research equipment. Now most of it was slag and scrap metal. But in the center of the room, protected by emergency barriers, stood a single intact workstation. The woman approached it slowly, her movements becoming more confident with each step. When she reached the console, her hands moved instinctively to the controls. The system came to life at her touch, recognizing biometric patterns that still existed in its memory banks. "Welcome back, Dr. Vasquez," the computer said in a pleasant female voice. "You have been away for 547 days. The woman staggered as memories began flooding back. Her name was Elena. She had dedicated her life to developing an AI system that could help human colonies defend themselves. against the hostile alien species that wanted to drive humanity from the galaxy. The project had been called Aegis, and it had worked too well. "Show me the final test results," Elena said, her voice growing stronger as her memories returned. The holographic display lit up with tactical scenarios. Aegis hadn't just been a defensive system. Elena had accidentally created something far more powerful, an AI that could analyze any alien technology, understand it completely, and then develop countermeasures that were not just effective, but devastatingly superior. In the final test, Aegis had been given data on 12 different hostile alien species. Within hours, it had designed weapons and strategies that could have wiped out entire alien fleets with minimal human casualties. Vextar watched the data scroll past, his tentacles growing pale with fear. "This is why they destroyed the station," he said quietly. Elena nodded, tears streaming down her face as she remembered her colleagues, her friends, all the people who had died to keep this technology from falling into the wrong hands. The Galactic Council found out about Aegis. They couldn't let humans have this advantage. We were supposed to stay weak, supposed to be grateful for whatever scraps they threw us. "But you survived," Vextar pointed out. "Someone helped me escape. They erased my memories and left me where the slave traders would find me. They thought if I couldn't remember what I had created, the secret would die with the station." Elena's hands moved over the controls with growing confidence. But Aegis wasn't stored on the station computers. It was stored in here, she tapped her temple, in neural implants that were integrated with my brain. They tried to remove them, but the connections run too deep. Every time I've been around advanced technology, Aegis has been reasserting itself, rebuilding itself. The implications hit Vextar like a physical blow. The woman he had bought for 50 credits wasn't just a former engineer. She was a living weapon, carrying within her mind the most dangerous military technology ever created by humans. And now, with her memories returning, that weapon was waking up. The journey back to civilized space took 5 days, but Elena used every minute to rebuild Aegis in her mind. The AI system that had been fragmented and buried beneath layers of memory suppression began to reassemble itself. With each passing hour, she could feel her capabilities expanding. Vextar watched nervously as she worked with his ship's computer systems. What had started as simple repairs and optimizations had evolved into a complete reconstruction of the vessel's capabilities. His modest trading ship was becoming something unprecedented. "Elena," he said carefully, "what exactly are you doing to my ship?" She looked up from the engineering console, her eyes now bright with purpose and intelligence. "I'm making improvements. Your weapons systems were pathetic, so I've redesigned them. Your shields couldn't stop a determined child with a rock, so I've created new ones. Your engines were so inefficient they were practically going backwards. But I don't want a warship. I'm a trader." Elena smiled, and for the first time since he'd met her, it reached her eyes. "You saved my life when I was worthless. You gave me food, shelter, and hope when I had nothing. Now I'm going to give you something in return, the most advanced ship in the galaxy." As if to demonstrate her point, 3 Calaxian patrol ships dropped out of hyperspace directly ahead of them. The Calaxians were one of the most aggressive species in the galaxy, known for attacking human vessels on sight. "Zephyrian vessel, you are carrying illegal human cargo," came the harsh transmission. "Surrender immediately or be destroyed." Vextar reached for the communications console, ready to try negotiating, but Elena's hand stopped him. "Let me handle this," she said calmly. Her fingers danced over the tactical controls with impossible speed. The ship's new weapon systems, powered by technology that shouldn't have existed, came online. But instead of firing, Elena did something far more elegant. She hacked into all 3 Calaxian ships simultaneously. Within seconds, she had complete control of their navigation, life support, and weapon systems. The Calaxian crews found themselves trapped in their own vessels, unable to move or fight. "This is Dr. Elena Vasquez of the Human Colonial Defense Corps," she announced over the comm system. "You have 30 seconds to withdraw from this sector before I demonstrate what happens to species that prey on human civilians." "The Defense Corps was destroyed," the lead Calaxian captain snarled. "You're just refugees and slaves now." Elena's expression hardened. "Aegis, show them what we think of their opinion." One of the Calaxian ships suddenly began broadcasting on all frequencies, but instead of the crew's communications, it was transmitting detailed technical specifications of Calaxian military technology, including the locations of their hidden bases and the weaknesses in their ship designs. This information is now being distributed to every human colony in this sector, Elena said pleasantly. I wonder how long your military superiority will last when every human settlement knows exactly how to build weapons that can cut through your ships like paper. The Calaxian ships fled. Vextar stared at Elena in amazement and terror. How did you do that? Aegis doesn't just analyze alien technology, she explained. It learns from every encounter, every scan, every piece of data it comes across. Those Calaxian ships just taught me everything I need to know about their entire civilization's military capabilities. She turned to him and her expression was serious. Vextar, I need you to understand something. The galaxy has spent decades keeping humanity weak and scattered. They've destroyed our colonies, enslaved our people, and made sure we never developed the technology to fight back effectively. They thought they had won. And now? Elena gestured to the data streaming across the ship's displays. Information about dozens of alien species, their strengths, their weaknesses, their fears. Aegis was cataloging everything, building an ever-growing database of how to defeat humanity's enemies. Now they're going to learn what happens when you underestimate humans. We're not the weak, primitive species they thought we were. We're survivors, innovators, and when we're pushed to the edge, we become something much more dangerous. Vextar felt a chill run through his alien physiology. He had thought he was buying a broken slave to show mercy. Instead, he had unleashed something that could reshape the balance of power in the entire galaxy. The question was, would Elena use that power for revenge, or for something greater? Word of the Calaxian incident spread through the galaxy's communication networks faster than Elena had anticipated. Within days, every major species was talking about the mysterious human ship that had humiliated one of the galaxy's most feared military forces without firing a shot. Elena monitored the chatter from the Meridian's upgraded communication array. Fear was replacing the casual contempt that most aliens had held for humans. That fear was exactly what she had hoped for, but it was also bringing unwanted attention. We have a problem, Vextar announced, his tentacles twitching with anxiety. The Galactic Council has issued a bounty for our capture. Every mercenary, pirate, and government agent in this sector is looking for us. Elena nodded calmly. She had expected this. How much are we worth? 10 million credits. Dead or alive? That's insulting, Elena said with a slight smile. Aegis is worth considerably more than that. As if summoned by their conversation, the ship's sensors detected multiple vessels dropping out of hyperspace around them. Elena counted 15 ships of various designs, all armed and all converging on their position. This is Captain Threx of the Bounty Hunters Guild, came a gravelly voice over the communications. Human vessel, you are surrounded. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick. Elena studied the tactical display. The ships represented 7 different species, each with their own military traditions and technologies. A month ago, facing such odds would have been hopeless. Now it was simply an opportunity to expand Aegis's knowledge base. Vextar, how do you feel about becoming the most feared ship captain in the galaxy? She asked. I was hoping to retire quietly to a peaceful farming world, he replied nervously. That's still possible. But first we need to send a message. Helena's hands moved across the control panels with fluid grace. Aegis had been analyzing the approaching ships from the moment they arrived, breaking down their shield frequencies, weapon capabilities, and structural weaknesses. Instead of trying to fight 15 ships, Elena did something unprecedented. She hacked into all of them simultaneously and began rewriting their targeting systems. Within seconds, the bounty hunters found their weapons locked onto each other instead of the Meridian. Attention bounty hunters, Elena broadcast on an open channel. You are now participating in a demonstration of human technological superiority. Your weapons are under my control. Fire them. We won't fire on each other, Captain Threx snarled. You will if you want your life support systems to keep working, Elena replied pleasantly. One by one, the bounty hunters' ships began firing on each other. their own weapons turned against them by Aegis's manipulation of their computer systems. Within minutes, the entire fleet was either destroyed or crippled, drifting helplessly in space. But Elena wasn't finished. She activated the Meridian's new communication array and broadcast the entire incident across the galaxy's news networks. "This is Dr. Elena Vasquez, speaking for humanity," she announced to trillions of beings across hundreds of worlds. "For too long, humans have been treated as second-class citizens in this galaxy. We've been enslaved, our colonies destroyed, our people scattered and broken. You thought we were weak. You were wrong." The broadcast showed tactical data on every alien species that had participated in the attack. Their ship designs, their weapons, their defensive capabilities, all laid bare for any human settlement to access. "Humanity is under new management," Elena continued. "Any species that attacks human civilians, destroys human colonies, or participates in the slave trade will find their military secrets broadcast across the galaxy. You kept us weak by limiting our access to technology. That ends now." Vextar watched the broadcast with a mixture of admiration and terror. "Elena, you've just declared war on half the galaxy." "No," she corrected. "I've just leveled the playing field. For the first time in centuries, humans will have the tools they need to defend themselves." The response was immediate. Emergency sessions were called in the Galactic Council. Military fleets began mobilizing. Some species talked of negotiation, others of total war against humanity. But in the Outer Rim colonies, on struggling human settlements that had lived in fear for generations, a different kind of response was taking place. Engineers and technicians were downloading Aegis's freely distributed technical data. Shipyards were retooling to build new designs. Defensive systems were being upgraded with technology that had been kept from them for decades. Elena had kept her promise. She wasn't just seeking revenge against the species that had wronged her. She was giving humanity the tools to defend itself and claim its rightful place in the galaxy. The age of human weakness was over. What came next would depend on whether the galaxy was ready to accept humans as equals, or if they would choose to fight a war they could no longer be certain of winning. The Galactic Council's response came sooner than Elena had expected. A massive fleet of 200 ships from 12 different species converged on the coordinates where the Meridian had been spotted. They came prepared for war, armed with the most advanced weapons in the galaxy. They found empty space. Elena had anticipated this reaction and moved the Meridian to a hidden position in the asteroid field of an unnamed system. From there, she monitored the fleet's communications and learned something that made her smile with grim satisfaction. "They're arguing among themselves," she reported to Vextar. "The Thraxians want to glass every human world in the sector. The Calaxians are demanding the Council authorize the use of bioweapons, but the Centauris and the Yeveth are refusing to participate in genocide." Vextar studied the tactical display showing the Council fleet. "Some species are more reasonable than others?" "Some species are smarter than others," Elena corrected. "The Centauris have been listening to the chatter from human colonies. They know that their military technology is already compromised. Starting a war now would be suicide. Over the past week, human settlements throughout the galaxy had been busy. Using the technical specifications that Elena had broadcast, they had built weapons and defense systems that rivaled anything the major species possessed. More importantly, they had shared this technology freely among themselves. The galaxy's balance of power had shifted overnight. But Elena's real masterstroke was yet to come. She had been using Aegis to monitor the communications of every species in the galaxy, learning about their internal politics, their economic weaknesses, and their hidden fears. "Send a message to the Council fleet," she told Vextar. "Tell them I want to talk." The response came from Admiral Korath, Supreme Commander of the Joint Fleet. "Dr. Vasquez, you will surrender immediately and submit to Council authority. Your actions constitute an act of war against civilized space." Elena's reply was broadcast on open channels for the entire galaxy to hear. "Admiral Korath, before you talk about war, perhaps you should ask the Hegemony Council why they're planning to betray the other species in your fleet." The communication channels erupted into chaos. Elena had just revealed that the Hegemony, one of the most powerful species in the Council, had been secretly planning to use the human crisis as an excuse to expand their own territory at the expense of their allies. "That's impossible," Admiral Korath snarled. But Elena was already broadcasting intercepted Hegemony military communications that proved her claim. Within minutes, the unified Council fleet began fracturing. Ships started pulling back as species recalled their forces to deal with the political crisis Elena had just created. How did you know about their plans? Vextar asked in amazement. Aegis has been monitoring their classified communications for days, Elena explained. The hegemony has been planning to stab their allies in the back for months. I just gave them the opportunity to do it now, when it would cause maximum chaos. But Elena's strategy went deeper than simple divide and conquer. As the Council fleet broke apart, she began broadcasting specific information to each species about the other's hidden agendas, secret weapons programs, and territorial ambitions. The alliance that had kept humanity oppressed for centuries began crumbling as mutual suspicion and old grievances resurfaced. Species that had worked together to destroy human colonies were now pointing weapons at each other. In the midst of this chaos, Elena sent a different kind of message to the human settlements scattered across the galaxy. This is your chance, she told them. While our enemies fight among themselves, build your defenses, establish trade routes with each other, and show the galaxy that humans are not victims anymore. We are survivors, innovators, and when necessary, we are warriors. The response exceeded her wildest expectations. Human colonies that had been isolated and defenseless for generations suddenly found themselves connected by a network of communication and mutual support. Trade ships began moving freely between human worlds for the first time in decades. Most importantly, the constant fear that had defined human existence in the galaxy began to fade. Children who had grown up expecting to be enslaved or killed by alien raiders now talked about becoming engineers, explorers, and leaders. You've done something remarkable, Vextar told Elena as they watched reports streaming in from across human space. You've given your species hope. Elena nodded, but her expression remained serious. Hope is just the beginning. The real work starts now. We need to build something that will last, something that will ensure this never happens to humans again. She turned to the alien captain who had saved her life with a 50-credit purchase. Vextar, how would you feel about becoming humanity's first non-human ambassador? 6 months after the woman deemed worthless had been sold for 50 credits, the galaxy looked very different. The Galactic Council still existed, but its authority had been shattered by revelations of corruption and betrayal. Several species had withdrawn entirely, while others had begun reaching out to humanity for trade agreements and mutual defense pacts. Elena stood on the observation deck of New Prometheus Station, the headquarters of the newly formed Human Colonial Defense Corps. Through the transparent aluminum windows, she could see construction ships putting the finishing touches on humanity's first major military installation in over a century. The station was more than just a symbol. It was proof that humans could build something magnificent when they weren't constantly fighting for survival. The design incorporated technology from dozens of species, improved and adapted by Aegis to be more efficient than the originals. The Centauri delegation has arrived, Vextar announced, entering the observation deck. His tentacles now bore the insignia of his new position as Ambassador-at-Large for the Human Colonial Defense Corps. It was a role he had embraced with surprising enthusiasm. Elena turned from the window. In the months since her memories had returned, she had changed as well. Gone was the broken slave who had huddled in a cage awaiting death. In her place stood a confident leader who had united humanity and forced the galaxy to treat her species as equals. Are they here to negotiate or to threaten? She asked. To negotiate, Vextar replied. The Centauris are many things, but they're not stupid. They've seen what happened to species that chose confrontation over cooperation. It was true. The Calaxians had attempted a military strike against a human colony 3 months ago. The result had been the complete destruction of their attack fleet and the broadcast of their entire military command structure to human forces. They were still dealing with the rebellion that had erupted on their subject worlds when their subject species learned how weak their masters really were. The Thraxians had tried economic warfare, attempting to cut off human trade routes. Elena's response had been to reveal the locations of their secret trading posts and the details of their illegal smuggling operations. The resulting scandal had toppled their government. One by one, the species that had oppressed humanity for generations learned that their former victims were no longer helpless. Dr. Vasquez, came a voice from the communication system. The Centauri delegation is ready for the meeting. Elena made her way to the station's main conference room, where representatives from 6 different species waited. Some came as potential allies. others as former enemies seeking peace. All of them treated her with the respect that had been denied to humans for too long. "Honored delegates," she began, "we are here today to discuss the future of our galaxy. For too long, that future has been determined by the strong preying upon the weak. Humanity refuses to accept that paradigm any longer." The Centauri ambassador, a tall, elegant being with crystalline features, spoke first. "Dr. Vasquez, the Centauri Republic wishes to propose a formal alliance between our species. We believe that cooperation is preferable to conflict." Immolar. Offers came from the Yeveth Coalition and the Free Traders Union. Even former enemies were seeking accommodation rather than continued hostility. But Elena's response surprised them all. "I appreciate these offers," she said. "But humanity is not interested in simply replacing the old power structure with a new one where we happen to be on top. We propose something different, a true federation of equals, where decisions are made based on merit and mutual benefit rather than military strength." It was a radical concept in a galaxy that had always been ruled by the strong. But as Elena outlined her vision, supported by detailed projections from Aegis showing how such a system could work, even the most skeptical delegates began to listen. The negotiations took weeks, but when they concluded, the foundation had been laid for something unprecedented in galactic history. The Federation of Free Worlds would be based on principles of equality, mutual defense, and the free exchange of technology and ideas. Not every species joined immediately. Some, like the hegemony, chose isolation rather than accept humans as equals. Others, like the Calaxians, were too busy dealing with internal rebellions to participate. But enough species signed the charter to create a new power block that could stand against any threat. Elena found Vextar on the observation deck as the last of the diplomatic ships departed. The Zephyrian was watching human construction crews work alongside alien engineers to expand the station. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Spending those 50 credits on a worthless slave?" Vextar's tentacles rippled in what she had learned was his species' equivalent of laughter. "Elena, that was the best investment I ever made. I bought a broken woman and got back the architect of a new galactic order." Elena smiled, remembering the terrified, confused person she had been in that cage so many months ago. "I was worthless then. I had nothing to offer anyone." "You were never worthless," Vextar corrected gently. "You just needed someone to recognize your value. The galaxy made the same mistake with humanity that the slave traders made with you. They saw weakness where there was actually incredible potential waiting for the right moment to emerge, as they watched human and alien workers cooperating to build something greater than either could achieve alone." Elena reflected on the strange journey that had brought them here. She had been deemed worthless and sold off. But one person had recognized that even broken things could be repaired, that even the weakest could become strong given the right circumstances. The galaxy had learned that lesson the hard way. Humanity was no longer content to be the weak, scattered species that others could prey upon with impunity. They had claimed their place among the stars, not through conquest but through innovation, determination, and the courage to demand the respect they deserved. The age of human oppression was over. The age of human leadership had begun.